Okay, welcome to another video. So Manjaro have just released an update to their popular Arch-based distribution, bringing us up to version 21.1.0 with the code name of Pahvo. So what we're going to do today is check out their GNOME version, and then in future videos we'll also check out their XFCE and KDE versions as well. So we're in the live environment right now, and the ISO size for this one is around about 3 GB. So before we go ahead and get this installed, we'll have a quick glance at the release info, and then we'll jump straight into it. So this release features major improvements to Calamares, including a file system selection for automatic partitioning and enhanced support for BTRFS. And this is the part that I'm most excited about in this new release as a long-time user of BTRFS myself. So for BTRFS installations, the default sub-volume layout has been improved for easier rollbacks and less wasted space on snapshots. Additionally, swap files and BTRFS file systems are now supported. So it's good to see that. I remember playing around with BTRFS and swap files a little while ago, and it was giving me a few issues, so it's nice to see that they've resolved that in this release. Now we're just going to read some of the GNOME stuff here. So the GNOME edition has received a major rework, the update to GNOME 40. The default layout has been redesigned to follow more closely upstream defaults, with some adjustments to reduce the pointer travel for users who prefer using a mouse with GNOME. For users that prefer the old vertical desktop layout, we have a Manjaro legacy layout which mimics the previous GNOME defaults. So that's really cool to see. So I was one that was quite happy with the switch to the new horizontal workspacing with GNOME 40, but I know that it has split opinions and some people do prefer the old vertical workspaces. So it's cool to see that they found a way around that of pleasing both camps. Firefox now comes with the GNOME desktop style theme enabled by default for more consistent look with the desktop, but this can be toggled with one click from the GNOME layout switcher for users preferring the native Firefox look. Kernel 5.13 is used for this release, such as the latest drivers available to date. With 5.4 LTS kernel minimal ISOs, we offer additional support for older hardware. So as always, we are going to be installing this natively, but for those of you who do like to skip the installation parts of these videos, there'll be a timestamp down below which will take you straight to the installed desktop. However, with the new automatic partitioning for things like BTRFS, it might be worth sticking around to seeing how that's all being implemented. Right, let's get this installed. So already it's got my correct language, so we can go straight forward to the next step, which is going to be your time zone, which again, it's already got the correct selection for me. So let's go to the next step, which is going to be your keyboard layout. And it's already got the right selection, and let's just test it in the box below to make sure everything's working before going to the next step. And here's the part that I am most excited about, and it is what we can do here with the erase disk. Let's just quickly change our storage device to the Samsung 860. Now, as you can see here, we have no swap, and then we also have a file system selection. So what we're going to do, as they've done some work to make the swap files work with BTRFS, we're going to do a swap to file and make sure that's all working once we are fully installed. And we're now going to change from ext4 to BTRFS. That way we can do full snapshots with the BTRFS file system, and they've also implemented automatic snapshots with time shift, which means every time you do an update, it's going to take a snapshot beforehand in case there are any issues and you need to roll back. And we're going to see how all that's being implemented as well. So that's going to give us two partitions, one for our EFI and one for our root partition of BTRFS, remembering that we will have a swap file which will reside somewhere in your root directory. Next. Okay, user account, we'll keep it super simple and just call it Manjaro, type in a password, and I'm also going to log in automatically and use the same password for the administrator account. So we've got a little summary here to make sure it's all correct before committing to our full install. Now the installation for Manjaro is one of the fastest I've seen, so I'll pause the video here and I'll come back once it's finished. And there we have it, the installation has completed in no time at all, in just a couple of minutes on my machine. So let's reboot and check out our freshly installed Manjaro featuring the GNOME desktop. And here we are. So on a fresh startup, it's going to take you straight into the GNOME 40 overview with, of course, the horizontal workspaces. But we'll check out how it's going to do the old style of GNOME with the vertical workspaces in just a moment. So what we are going to do is just quickly remove the launch at start welcome screen, because we won't be needing that for the moment. Now we are going to see if there's any updates to get. There we go, spoke too soon. We do have an update that's just come through the package manager in the top hand right. So we're going to open up our package manager. Now, before we actually apply the update, I want to search for something. So with time shift, it's going to be using auto snapshot as well. And there is an auto snapshot package available for time shift in the AUR. However, I'm interested to see how they're going to do things. So all we're going to do is type in time shift and see what comes up. There we go. So we have Timeshift, and they've actually packaged up their own version of the auto snap feature, which is Timeshift Auto Snap Manjaro. So every time you do an upgrade, it's going to go ahead and make a snapshot of your system beforehand. And if need be, if there's any issues in the update, you can then roll back, investigate whatever's happening, and then make any fixes that you might need. So what we're going to very quickly do though is jump into Timeshift itself, and I'll show you how this is all going to work. So we'll quickly do the sort of welcome startup wizard. So next, as we've got BTRFS next, and we're going to have daily snapshots. So that's going to take a snapshot automatically for you, and finish. So as you can see, we currently have no snapshots whatsoever. Now, after we've done this upgrade, we should then get one line or one entry here of a snapshot, and it should tell you in the comments that it's an auto snapshot taken before an upgrade. So let's give that a go. So what we're going to go ahead and do is go back into our updates, install the update, which is for Firefox. So we're just going to quickly apply that, type in our password. Now I'm going to pause the video here, and then we'll come back once that's finished, and we'll check out that the Timeshift auto snapshotting has worked. So that update has finished, and our system is now completely up to date. So let's close this off, and now I'll wait for the moment of truth and just open up Timeshift and make sure that it has indeed taken the auto snapshot that we can always roll back to if need be. And there we go, brilliant. So I'm super happy with the way this is being implemented. So if you go into the comments here, we can see Timeshift auto snap created before an upgrade, and then of course we could always restore to that point. Now what I'm going to do to show you the benefits of BTRFS, especially with Timeshift set up in such a way, we're going to take our own snapshot. So we're just going to create one, and we're just going to put a comment on here so I know which one it is, start. And then what we're going to do throughout the video is we're going to install a load of stuff and make some changes, and then towards the end we're going to roll back to the beginning, and then I'll show you how cool that's going to work. So it's going to give you a solid restore sort of point to then get back to before any changes were made. Now what I want to very quickly do is open up a terminal. Now they don't have Control-Alt-T bound out of the box, so to save time later on, we're going to go straight into our shortcuts and just quickly add the GNOME terminal shortcut. So we'll go all the way to the bottom, add a shortcut, type in GNOME terminal, and we're just going to copy and paste that to the next bit, hit enter, Control-Alt-T, and now we're going to add that shortcut. And now every time we want to open up the terminal with Control-Alt-T, there is going to be our terminal. Now I don't think we have htop installed out of the box, so we're very quickly going to install htop using pacman. And then what we'll do a reboot, check out the RAM on a fresh boot, and then we'll start taking a look around and making some changes to our system. So I'm going to pause the video here, and then we'll come back from a fresh reboot. So we're back, and we've just run htop in a terminal, and we can see RAM usage wise we're using just over 900 MB on a fresh boot, which isn't the lightest ever, but it's about what I'd expect from a full fat desktop distribution featuring the GNOME desktop. Now just beneath that we can of course see the swap file that it created us during the installation process, and it's quite small. I thought it might have been a little bit larger than that, but on my machine it's giving us about half a gig, so 512 MB. And the swap value of that will more than likely be 60. So if you go proc sys vm /swappiness, you can see that it is indeed 60, and the swap file will actually reside somewhere in your root partition. So if we just ls our root, so it's not in the actual root folder, but it has got a folder here called swap. So if we go ls swap, there you can see your swap file, which is what we are seeing in htop there. So we're just going to jump into the about section of GNOME's control center so we can confirm which windowing system we're using out of the box. I do believe it's got both installed though. So as we can see there, windowing system at the moment is Wayland, but we can also go into X11 in the login screen, and the GNOME version we are currently using is 40.3.0. So with Wayland being the default selection here, that should mean we'll get the full native touchpad gestures for Wayland, and we'll see how it's going to work with things in X11 as well. I'll get the laptop out and we'll check out the touchpad gestures towards the end. So with that out of the way, I think what we should probably do is just start with the default desktop layout, as this is the thing you're all going to be seeing when you first start up from a fresh installation of Manjaro's GNOME edition. So very nice and simple layout. We have our top panel here with a hot corner at the left, and of course your activities button, and then your clock and notification central, and then the only other indicator we have in our system tray here is the package manager update. So every time an update comes through, that icon will change and we can jump into it and apply those updates. And then at the bottom we have a nice little dock which is slightly floating off the bottom of our screen, and we have some nice rounded corners with a few pinned applications, and then we have our show applications button there as well, which of course you can always get into your overview with a single tap of your left super key, and then if you double tap it very quickly, that can get you straight into your applications view. And then there's one more shortcut you can do, which is left super and A, which is going to get you there as well. And of course we're using standard GNOME 40 kind of layout, so your workspaces are going to be spread out in this kind of fashion. We'll check out how it's going to work with the legacy mode in just a moment. And of course, a right click on your desktop will let you jump into display settings, and then change background. And while we're here, let's have a quick peruse through the wallpapers. They're usually quite good on their wallpapers. There is one that I do remember quite liking, which is right about there. So let's have a look. There we go. So I think out of the box, it does actually look very nice, especially on just the standard Manjaro's desktop layout. So what we'll do then, we'll spend a bit of time going through the different desktop layouts, and of course it's going to be utilizing a lot of different GNOME extensions for those layouts, which we'll check out in just a moment as well. So we're going to go into our application view, and we're going to select layouts just here. And there we go. So as you can see, we have a total of 6 different layouts to choose from, and if we go into the settings, there's some further options that we can do here. So we can go for dynamic wallpapers, we can jump straight into the GNOME tweak tool, we can go into the online accounts, and we can also go into GNOME extensions. And then on the right, we can enable or disable Manjaro's branding. We can see that we're in the Wayland session, and we've got a little toggle there to disable that, and that's very cool. We then have desktop icons for those of you who use them. I'm personally not a huge desktop icon guy. I like quite a clean looking blank canvas. And then we have system tray, automatic dark themes, so that's very cool. Window tiling pop shell, so we can also get some pop shell action working. And then we have the GNOME's native Firefox theme, and we'll check how all of that looks as well. So while I'm here though, I do just want to quickly enable the automatic dark theme, so we'll get a nice little moon-like icon on the top part here, and if we just very quickly press that, that's going to change from the dark to light themes in pretty much instant. That's, yeah, quite like that. I think I'll even leave that there. So let's have a look at these different layouts. So by default, we're on the standard Manjaro one with the dock at the bottom and the panel at the top with the GNOME 40 kind of layout. Now, starting at the very top left, we of course have the Manjaro Legacy. And depending on how this works and what they're using to implement this, I think this is a very cool middle ground to sort of please both users of the vertical or horizontal workspacing. So let's go ahead and select that and press apply. Okay, so far what that's done is it's moved our dock or our dash from the bottom to the left hand side of the screen in sort of typical old school GNOME fashion, and we still have the hot corner at the top left. Now let's go into our overview, because this is what I'm most interested in checking out. Okay, so it still sort of retains a lot of the GNOME 40 look, but now our workspaces are on the right hand side, and it's not sort of recessed, so it's always going to be there. You don't need to pop your mouse over for it to appear. And now let's have a look, see if the scroll wheel works from the up and down motion. It does indeed. So I think what I definitely will do in a moment is go over onto the laptop and see how all of these little things will implement the touchpad gestures as well. So of course these should be dynamics. Whenever we move a applications window to one, we should then get a fresh workspace happening there on the right. And of course it will then disappear when that workspace is no longer occupied with an applications window. Okay, I think that's a very good way of implementing it. I'm interested to see what extensions that's using. I'm not aware of which one that might be, so we'll jump into the extensions package in just a moment. But a very cool middle ground. I'm quite happy with the way that they've done things there. We then have the traditional layout, which is going to give you kind of like a Windows-esque kind of layout of a single panel at the bottom. And for that, it's going to use an extension called -2 panels. Let's go ahead and apply that one now. And there we go. So now we've got all of our everything happening at the bottom part of our screen. Now you can of course move that around in the -2 panel settings if you wanted it at the top, change the spacing and all of that good stuff. And it has also applied the desktop icons now, so it really is giving you that traditional kind of workflow. And this time we don't have like an show applications button. We now have a quick button to get straight into an application launcher with some quick settings here, as well as to get into your home directories. And then showing all programs will then give you your applications categories, and you can jump into them and launch any applications you want. Or alternatively, you can search for the application and hit enter. And is that bound to our left super? It doesn't appear to be. So left super is still taking us into the GNOME overview, and it's still using the GNOME 40 workflow. Okay, very cool. Let's have a look at Unity. So Unity layouts are always pretty much my favorite kind of layouts, as it's the sort of first desktop environment I really fell in love with. And I do really like the way they've done that here. So we've got a little dock or panel at the left hand side of our screen which stretches edge to the bottom of the panel at the top. And then we've got our running applications with a line separating them to show you your pinned applications. And this time, instead of the application menu we had on the dash to panel traditional layout, it's going to give you the arc menu in a sort of Unity-esque kind of fashion. And this is going to be using a GNOME extension called Unite to change the way the top bars are working here. So as you can see, our clock is no longer central, it's now at the very right hand side of the screen. And let's quickly look at what a full screen application looks like in that view. Very nice. So that was the Unity layout. Now let's check out their GNOME layouts. This is going to be a more close to stock experience for GNOME 40. So let's apply that now. And then as you can see, it's going to give you a really clean desktop with just the top bar there. You have no dash or dock on the desktop. So to get to your dash, you're going to have to go into your actual overview, and it's going to be this nice one at the bottom here as well. And of course, again, it's the stock GNOME 40 kind of experience. Now, last but not least, we have tiling, which is going to be using the material shell, I do believe, judging by that image there. So let's go ahead and apply that. And this is going to change your entire workflow across the sort of entirety of your desktop. And if you go into the top right here, there are different tiling modes. So at the moment, we are, I do believe, using the half layout. That's what it appears to be. And of course you can add sort of different workspaces here, and whenever there's a clear one, it's going to give you an application menu which you can of course search through as well. So you can type in Firefox, hit enter, and then it will go ahead and open up that application in the tiling view mode. I'm just going to press not now for the moment, and let's close that off and then keep it moving. And of course there's really quite a lot of different ways you can work with Material Shell. So for those of you who do like your tiling windows, definitely worth having a bit of time checking out how this all works. It's a very good little GNOME extension. I did an independent video of it quite a while ago. I think there's been some new changes to it since that video. And we are now back in the standard Manjaro layout. So I think what we're going to do is jump straight into the extension package and see what it's utilizing to get all of these different layouts, especially with the legacy mode for GNOME, which I'm very intrigued to see what's going on. So there's quite a lot here, and I do actually like the way they've done things here. I think this is probably one of my favorite out of the box GNOME experiences that you can get from pretty much any distribution. So at the top we have the app indicator and case status notifier item. We have the application menu. We have the arc menu, which was the one that we were using in the Unity layout. Auto move windows, we have dash to dock, which is that bad boy right there. We then have dash to panel, which was being used in a traditional Windowsy style kind of layout. We then have desktop icons, which was giving us that desktop icon implementation that we saw in the other layouts. We have game mode, and then we have a GNOME 40 UI improvements. Okay, so this tunes GNOME 40's overview UI to make it more usable. And then we have the GS Connect GNOME extension, which is kind of like KDE Connect, so you can use that to sync notifications and all of that good stuff across your Android smartphones. We then have launch new instance, and then we have Material Shell, which was being implemented in their tiling window layout. We have native window placement. We have the night theme switcher, which is this bad boy right here, which I do actually very much like. And then we have the places status indicator, removable drive menu. So enabling that will then give you a little sort of removable button here. And then if you've got any drives in, like we currently have the Manjaro ISO USB that we created, we can then press that and it will let you know it's safe to remove that device. We then have our screenshot windows sizer. We have Unite, which was what was being used in the Unity layout. So it's a shell extension, which makes a few tweaks to the top bar, basically. We then have user themes, and then we have the vertical overview. So this is what's giving us that sort of legacy GNOME kind of feel. So as you can see here, it's bringing back vertically stacked workspaces. So that's a very cool thing to have included. We then have window list, a window navigator, workspace indicator, and then we have the X11 gestures GNOME extension. So I definitely will jump onto the laptop and just see how the extensions for the touchpad gestures are working, as we do of course have a Wayland session as well. Okay, so for the theming, for the applications, it's using Adwaita, Maya, Compact, Dark, and then we do have a lot of other ones to choose from. So we have all of the variations of Matcha and then the other Adwaita, Maya variations. And with the compact mode, what that's going to do is kind of shrink your Windows title bars. And I actually always have found that GNOME's title bars are quite large by default, so I do actually quite like a compact theme. Then for the icons, we have the Papyrus Dark Maya with the other Papyrus variations. And all in all, it's a very decent icon theme. I do actually very much like it, despite my preference for sort of uniformed, squared, rounded corner icons. I do think Papyrus looks very nice, especially on the way they've implemented it here on their GNOME edition. Now, as far as applications, it doesn't appear that they bloat things out too much, but they do have a good selection to get most users up and running. So for our email client, we have Geary. Not my personal favourite on GNOME. I'd probably switch that out for something like Evolution, which we might do in just a moment to test out these sort of time shift rollbacks anyway. We then have Maps, Videos, Document Scanner, Cheese, which is your webcam viewer, and then accessories. We've got a few additional pages here. We have the icon browser, transmission for your torrents. We have the Quantum Theming Manager. We have the GNOME Tweak tool. We have Caffeine NG, so that will sort of limit sort of screensavers kicking in and things like that. GNOME disks, and then we also have Touche backups, which is going to be Deja Darp, Archive Manager, Calculator, and not too much else going on there. We then of course have our add or remove software, which is where you're going to be installing most of your applications, unless you are of course going to be using Pacman in the terminal. And if we go into the preferences and just quickly type in our password, we can see how it's going to be implementing things like third party. So in third party here, we can of course enable the AUR support, which we will go ahead and do. And then we can also enable Flatpak support, which we will also go ahead and do. And I'll let it check for updates. Okay, and then of course to install new applications, just type any old thing in, hit enter, and then you can do bulk installations. A very good package manager, sort of GUI front end. What else do we have? We have GFarm, we have layouts, which we spent a fair bit of time checking out. And then we have Lollipop, which is a very simple but usable music application. I much prefer this over something like Rhythmbox, especially when you're using the GNOME desktop. Very nice and simple music library. What else do we have? We then have Manjaro's user guide, and then we have a folder called Office. So we're not using LibreOffice, we are instead using only Office Desktop Editor, which I'm not actually super familiar with. It's not one I've spent a whole lot of time using. It's got kind of like a Windows-esque kind of look though for like Microsoft Office. Let's just quickly type in a few characters. So it's working with automatic spell checking, but like I said, I'm not a huge user of only Office, so I can't say whether that's as good or better than LibreOffice. I'll probably just still go ahead and install LibreOffice. We then have in System Tools quite a lot here. So we have our V4L2 test utility. Do we have the capture utility? We do indeed. We have our VNC server browsers, Qt5 settings, Manjaro's notifier settings, main menu. We have our system monitor, time shift. We have our firewall configuration, which is a super simple sort of front end for the firewall, which we're all used to by now. And it will just be a very simple window like so, where you can change your status and all of that good stuff. What else have we got? So in System Tools, we also have Manjaro settings. So here's where you can jump into the Manjaro settings manager, install your language packs, kernel settings, and all of that good stuff. And then we have, is there anything else in System Tools that I want to check out? So we have gparted, which is a more sort of full-featured application to manage sort of partitions and drives as opposed to GNOME disks. Deconf editor, and then we have Manjaro logs helper, and then we also have Ranger, which is a nice terminal-based file manager. So you can open up a terminal anywhere, hit a Ranger, and it's probably my favorite sort of command line file manager out of the ones that we all sort of know and love. So let's close that off and see if there's anything else I want to check out. And we have web apps, which is actually quite a cool little application. I do believe it first premiered on Linux Mint. So if we go ahead and just open it up, I'll quickly show you how that works. And you can, if you've got different web browsers installed, choose which browser you're going to use. So let's say you wanted a YouTube web app. We could just go YouTube, type in youtube.com, and then that will automatically find the icon, or if you click on it, you can then go through a selection and then choose one yourself as well. Now we're going to leave that in the category of internet. We're not going to have the navigation bar, and we're just going to leave it on the defaults. So if we hit OK, and now if we go into our application, or just our overview, type in YouTube, you will see that we have the web app there ready to go of YouTube, and that'll play in its own window, kind of like a standalone application. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time installing a load of applications, most of which I'm not really going to need, but we're just going to use this to show you one of the benefits of using BTRFS as your file system. So imagine you installed a few things that just broke your system, or you messed something up along the way. You can then roll back to a snapshot you took and then be right back where you started. So let's go ahead and just install a load of stuff. We'll go for Kdenlive, so we'll install that. Let's go for GIMP, we'll install GIMP. Let's also go for what's something else that we might want to go ahead and install. Let's go for Virt Manager, like so. And now I'm just going to apply this. We're just going to leave that like so, type in your password, and then we're going to let that go ahead and install those applications. And then we're going to restore it and see that those applications are no longer present, resetting our computer to a previous time. Right, so we've now installed all of those applications. So if we go into application overview, we can see Kdenlive, Virtual Manager, and then GIMP as our image editor. And what we're going to do now is we're going to restore it to the point beforehand and then make sure that's all working with Timeshift. Let's close all of this off. Open up Timeshift, type in your password, and we've created our own snapshot. Of course, there is auto a snapshot there for the auto snap, but we're going to go ahead and use the one that we created ourselves, which was start. So we're going to select it. We're going to press restore, so it's going to give you a bit of a warning there. So we're just going to press next. Restore completed. So restored subvolumes will become active after a system is restarted. So how that's going to work is we've got this live one here, and then once we restart, we'll be at the point of start. So we're going to go and reboot now and make sure all of those applications are no longer there. Right, so we've just booted back up. Now let's go into our show all applications. And then as you can see, we are back on a fresh installation of Manjaro before we made any changes to our system, including all of the applications that we installed ourselves. So if we go back into Timeshift, and again, it's going to ask you for your root password, we can see there we now have the before restoring. And what we're going to go ahead and do is just delete that, but we could always then go back to that as well if we liked. And that is just one of the many benefits of using BTRFS, especially with Timeshift and especially with the Timeshift auto snap. So if an update comes in and for whatever reason, you know, it happens sometimes, it sort of breaks certain parts of your machine, you can then go ahead and roll back and then investigate what you need to do, perhaps hold some packages for an update and all of that good stuff. Now, I think before we jump over to the laptop and test out how it's doing these touchpad gestures in both Wayland and X11, let's just very quickly make sure our sleep is working. So we haven't got hibernate as an option because we don't have a large enough swap partition. We instead went for the swap file, as I've always had trouble with swap files and BTRFS, and Manjaro's latest edition appears to have resolved those issues I was having. So what we're going to do is just press suspend, but before we do that, let's open up a few applications and make sure they're all going to still be there when we come back. And let's just write test sleep. So now we're going to go ahead and suspend this machine, and for that to work, when we start back up, those applications need to be there in the same position as they were before we pressed suspend. Right, so we're just resuming from suspend now, so it's going to take you straight to your lock screen with a nice transparent background. Let's type in our password, and then as you can see, all of the applications are right where we've left them. So I think what we're going to do now is jump over onto the laptop. I've already got a session of this installed, and we're now going to test out the touchpad gestures on both X11 and Wayland before we start to wrap things up. Right, as you can see, we are currently in the Wayland session on my laptop. So what we're going to do is jump over to the other camera, and we're now going to test out the touchpad gestures and make sure they're working on both Wayland and X11. So let's try the 3-finger swipe to get into the overview and then again into the applications. So that's all working, and let's try and change workspaces. There we go. So it is one-to-one following exactly the motion that your fingers are going in. And again, swipe up and then once more to get into the applications. All very fluid, following exactly what my fingers are doing. So I think what we'll do now is we'll jump into the X11 session and see how the touchpad gestures are working over on that side. Okay, we have now switched over to an X11 session, and we're going to test out the same touchpad gestures, but this time on X11 as opposed to Wayland. So first up, 3 fingers, we're going to swipe up, and then we're going to swipe up once more. Brilliant. And let's just make sure it's pretty much one-to-one tracking with the motion of our fingers. It is indeed. Now let's go onto the desktop and try a swipe. There we go. Absolutely perfect. Okay, before we wrap up, it appears that it's also picked up the fingerprint sensor on my laptop. So we're just going to test that that works with fingerprint login, and then we'll start wrapping it up with some final thoughts. And here we are back at the desktop. Now, unfortunately, I was unable to properly capture the login screen with my capture card. It was just being a bit weird, but the fingerprint login worked absolutely fine with my fingerprint sensor. So I'm super happy with that. And I think that that's about where I'm going to wrap it up with my refresh look of Manjaro's GNOME edition. And it just goes from strength to strength. I'm a super fan that they've now got BTRFS easily usable for any user in the installation screen, especially now that it's set up with Timeshift auto snapshot capabilities. And I think it's very cool. They've really pretty much catered for all kinds of GNOME users out there. Whether you're on Wayland or X11, you can still use the touchpad gestures with the one-to-one tracking. Or if you're someone who wasn't a massive fan of the sort of switch over on the workspaces to GNOME 40, you have the legacy mode layout there to keep you happy as well. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and if you've really enjoyed it, you can consider supporting me on Patreon. Join the Discord, there's a link in the description below, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.